And I'm very, very excited about opening up human creativity, right? So I think fundamentally, one of the most exciting things about software, and I've been building software since I was 16 and I'm 35 now, so it's a long time, is about building tools that users love that allow them to do something they couldn't do before. I think that is just a beautiful thing, and that is literally what gets me excited first thing in the morning.
Hey, this is Brian, and you're listening to JAMstack Radio, a bi-weekly series where we discuss modern web development with maintainers, founders, and developers. JAMstack Radio is brought to you by Heavybit, the leading investor in developer-first startups. For more information, visit heavybit.com. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, or if you'd like to suggest a topic, find us on Twitter @JAMstack Radio. What's up, y'all? It's B-Dougie here, and I'm really excited about JAMstack returning in person this November. I'll be there at this event, which is going to be the biggest party of the year. So join me by getting your ticket at jamstackconf.com and get an exclusive 20% off with the code RADIO. That's 20% off of your JAMstack Conf ticket with the promo code RADIO. That's awesome. See you there. Welcome to another installment of JAMstack Radio. On the line, we got Peadar Coyle from Aflorithmic. That's a tongue twister.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister. Yeah, so really, really excited to be here. Thank you very much. I'm really, really excited to talk to the JAMstack community. I think it's an awesome podcast.
Yeah. And then say the name of since I flubbed it so poorly.
Yeah, so we're Aflorithmic, and we're an API-first solution for audio development or audio at scale.
Yeah, for sure. And so I guess, Peadar, can you intro yourself and tell us what you do and sort of how you got there?
Okay, so I'm CTO and co-founder of Aflorithmic, and I've been working on developer tools for a long time. So I was working on PyMC3, which is a noted machine learning library in Python, and I did a lot of open source work, and I worked a lot in the kind of machine learning data science space. But I gradually gravitated more towards data engineering and DevOps. But now, unfortunately, many CTOs, I just manage a team day to day. So I don't really get my time to do a lot of coding, which I miss and love. But I do try to keep myself involved, and I'll talk some more, some tools I like to use and stuff. I think it's very important that you're aware. I'm very, very excited about opening up human creativity, right? So I think fundamentally, one of the most exciting things about software, and I've been building software since I was 16 and I'm 35 now, so it's a long time, is about building tools that users love that allow them to do something they couldn't do before. I think that is just a beautiful thing, and that is literally what gets me excited first thing in the morning. It got me excited to set up this company. It gets me excited every day, and we're 3.5 years in now. We raised a bit of money. We raised a small seed round. We have some wonderful customers. I can talk some more about them later on. And it's a very interesting space. Of course, a very competitive space as well, because there's a lot of developer tools. There's a lot of tools out there. It can be quite difficult to get developer mind share and stuff like that. So that's all these challenges can be very fun.
Excellent. So I would love to talk about the product and the approach that you all are doing as well. So can you walk us through what you're working on as well as far as product goes?
Yeah, sure. So we're API first. So we work with any programming language, but fundamentally we're for automating audio production at scale. And we use a lot of AI. So we use synthetic speech generation. We use AI music generation. But fundamentally, what we really try to do is you may go and hire voice artists. You may go to a recording studio. These are quite technical tools. So a lot of one of my co-founders, Timo, is a musician. So there's a lot of technical tools there. I don't know if you know about the whole audio ecosystem. There's classically things called digital audio workstations, and the gap in the market we saw was these things are just too hard to learn to do. And fundamentally, what's very interesting is it's not so much competing at the high end. It's more the low end. So the hobbyist who someone like myself who has no musical ability whatsoever, ironically for an audio company, is is about unlocking that kind of latent creativity. So let's kind of give a couple of examples. For example, in this podcast, you may want to generate an advert or generate many adverts and put them through to your podcast. You may want in a kind of synthetic avatar or games application, you may want to add like voiceovers. You may want to add like voiceovers to videos, and those are kind of areas we see a lot of our interests and such.
Okay, yeah, and I'm familiar with the digital audio workstations. I spent a lot of time as a bedroom musician and record a lot of content, I guess, on GarageBand and Pro Tools. Yeah. And like in comparison to what you're working on, Aflorithmic, I use a tool which is called Descript. And very similar. I don't really have like a strong use case for it. I just happened to it was installed when I was doing some quick video editing, really. Yeah. But what I liked about that, and I guess this is your similar approach, is that is it like more of you're not educated in how audio works, but you have to edit like a podcast. Yeah. Is that what you're all trying to like solve?
So, I mean, it's an interesting example. So I think the script is often, is great for like if you're a podcast host and you want to edit content. I think your script's an awesome tool. I think where we add more value is like where you want to like scale or dynamically generate audio. And like all of what actually happens is like you might have something like localization. So, so you might want to add like, in a game, you want to add, various parameters. You say something like, hey, Brian, hey, Peadar, hey, you're in the UK, you're in Spain, et cetera, right? And you see examples in like advertising and stuff like this, and you see examples in games. But I think what's probably more interesting is how that kind of unlocks latent creativity, stuff you just couldn't do before because it was just too expensive to do, right? So so sometimes we'll have customers who say, oh, I wanted to add a voiceover to this video, and over and over again, I just didn't have the time, or because sitting and like sort of manually editing these things is quite cumbersome. So sometimes we see people like who want to do like walkthrough videos, like classical SaaS use case. You record the video. But what happens, for example, if your content slightly changes, right? So, like either your language changes, your location, or you make slightly subtle changes to the product, you change the name of a feature, right? But your video still works, right? So why should you don't want to like be recording new voices each time. So normally what actually happens is people just sort of like leave the video and fundamentally we see like every video asset often needs some sort of audio asset to attach to itself, right? So like that's kind of like and the other thing that's very exciting to me is like things like localization. So you might have multiple languages, multiple accents. Of course, a very important thing in the United States of America. You might want to have multiple accents, to get your message across in different parts, and of course things like multiple topics and stuff like this. Does that make any sense to you? I can dive a little bit deeper on that if whatever. But
yeah. So the AI side is that. So am I using your product to basically train the AI to learn my voice, so that way when I create my tutorials and screencast, I can interject.
You can. We have a functionality for that, but often you might not want to use that. You might just find a voice. We have like 600 plus voices, 50 plus languages. We're adding more day and day. You might want one that you particularly like because it particularly suits your brand or your use case. Unless you're a professional voice actor or actress, you might not have the capability or the ability to really record your voice well. You might want to do it, and we encourage you to do it, but you may want to just use something off the shelf instead.
Yeah. And you provided some links before, which like the one of the links you provided is like the digital humans, where it sounds like you could chat to Albert Einstein, which is I guess it's Einstein itself, because I'm not sure if his name is actually trademarked, but like to talk to humans or like this AI. Can you explain a bit about that product?
Yeah, so I mean that's for one of our partners, Unique, and they wanted to build digital humans, kind of for the metaverse, and there's a couple of companies like that out there. And we reproduced, or we were inspired by Einstein to like, we got a voice actor, we did the whole process, we documented it. There's a lot of like care and stuff involved in doing that, and you want to represent it as well as possible. But like people loved it. It's still heavily used People use it kind of like as an exploratory tool, people learning about science. Someone with a physics degree, it gave me a lot of joy that people were interacting with Einstein, a digital Einstein. And you get like this kind of like chatbot experience. And I think like in the future, like when we have like more metaverse like experiences, I think you'll just see more and more of these things. And some of these things will be entirely synthetic, but some of these things will be like based on real life characters, and some of these things will be for educational needs, which I think is a very interesting use case. And some of these things will be for possibly even use cases that I would have trouble coming up with right now, right? I think we've seen tech in the last like 10 or 20 years, the rise of things like NFTs, etc. I wouldn't have predicted that, right? So, for example, I think with something like the metaverse, I'll probably not try to make any strong prediction about where things are going to go.
Yeah, but I would say like you by investing in the AI part of this technology, it seems like AI is it's a big thing right now. Like there's entire, I don't know if you saw recently, maybe you're part of it, but the AI grant, which Nat Friedman, former CEO of GitHub, is pushing out and asking for folks to apply to this so they can advance the technology in the entire space.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm personally very interested in, and we spend a lot of time as a team thinking about this, is like, so I think like fundamentally one of the problems, I don't mean this to criticize, I worked in AI for a long time, I don't want this to criticize like earlier products, but I think a problem a lot of earlier AI products did was they sort of like, it was AI was the magic and they never thought about product market fit, right? So product market fit is always essential, right? And I think one question, and we've seen this with the kind of rise of like stable diffusion and like these prompts and these kind of AI generated models, like large language models, like, like what kind of products does that open up? And with ours, with the rise of like text to speech, and like kind of WaveNet based models and similar other deep learning models, you basically had the capability to build products that you couldn't do before. I mean, my CEO, Timo, said, like, what do you do whenever AI can make a human level synthetic speech, right? What applications does that open up, right? We spent like 2 years just doing heavy R&D to really explore, really what we were doing, what we were building. And of course, that can be a little bit frustrating because when you're exploring, it's not really clear. But like I remember, I find it, the whole AI grant thing by Nat Friedman was awesome. Like he talked a lot about like where's the intersection. That's a lot of the challenge we have. Like so where do you do something purely AI generated? Where do you do a template? Where do you use like old-fashioned technology because that's a better user experience? How do you allow someone to record their voice in an easy-to-use manner? Like how do you make that an easy experience? Because a lot of that stuff is UX, and some of that is AI. Like filtering, digital signals processing, whatever you want to do. Like where do you if you're writing content? How do you be inspired by things like large language models or whatever to write good content to get kind of pass writer's block so you can produce a great audio experience for your customers, right? And there's a lot of things you can do wrong there, right? If you just like throw AI models at it and like not really think from a product point of view, I think you're going to run into problems because you're going to like do something that like kind of hits the uncanny valley or doesn't really fit into the workflow that a developer does. Because whenever you're building a developer tool, or developer first tool, you don't live just in their head by yourself. You live in their head with many, many other tools, right? So you have to think about all those sort of things. And I think what's really exciting about this space is we're only getting started at figuring out what all those levers are. And I think that's like kind of why it's such a platform kind of shift that people are very excited about. Of course, a lot of venture capitalists like Nate Friedman are very excited about these things for that reason. But I think there's kind of like no playbook, right? And that I think is kind of the risk and the opportunity there.
Is that something that you're looking to solve with your product? Because like,
how do you mean?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, it was selling magic versus actually having product market fit. And I appreciate when like stable diffusion, like being able to understand, okay, type in here, I'll go to image. That is closer to product market fit than like generating this random images on the fly through like generative art, I guess was the previous use case.
Yeah.
So like when it comes to what you're doing, like you're providing a path for people to pick a language model or pick a digital human, which is not, it's what Unique was doing, but using the similar technology. So I guess the question is like, are you creating that on-ramp for a bunch of folks who are uneducated in the AI side of the audio piece?
So what do you mean by uneducated in AI? Like, are you saying that you like the product's not for someone who understands AI? The product's just for someone who can code, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we've solved a lot of this. And I encourage everyone listening to give it a play. Send me some emails if you have some issues. You should be able to get up and running and quite quickly. But there are still a lot of, I think, like UX challenges.
Yeah.
Like we've always been a very product company from day one. We were never really thinking about just doing deep tech for the sake of it. We always wanted to solve real world problems. And I think that's why we're quite user focused. We spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time, even as CTO, talking to users and trying to understand, like how we fit in with their tools, but also how to build better on-ramps. So, and some of that is, can be using things like large language models or whatever, but some of that can be, just clever templating or, good user experience, or even subtle stuff like, what you name the endpoints of your API, because that actually has a huge effect on your adoption rate, right? If you call your API endpoint something slightly esoteric, you hurt the kind of user experience because a developer expects their tools to work in a certain way. So we think a lot about this, and we're working on that. I just want to be humble that I don't think we're 100% there yet, but I'm very interested in this whole explosion of synthetic media, the rise of things like GitHub, Copilot, and all these sort of tools, and what insights they give us about how this product space is, right? Because I think fundamentally, like, technology is indistinguishable from magic, right? So fundamentally, AI enables you to do things that you couldn't do. We're seeing, for example, the rise of prompt engineers in stable diffusion space, for example. We could have the rise of algorithmic engineers writing prompts so that you can write beautiful audio or something like this by you understanding, and have like marketplaces like that. I could see that happening in the next couple of years.
Yeah. And there's a use case that you actually provide in the show notes that I want to actually talk about, because I've already like fumbled through saying the name, but also I mispronounced your name prior.
Yeah.
So your name looks like Peter, but it's pronounced Patter.
Yeah.
So like, can you talk about how to overcome that sort of thing in AI, like teaching like robots on how to pronounce properly?
Oh, you're talking about like our voice intelligence features. Yeah. So, I mean, so I'm very excited about this. I think it's awesome. It was such a nitty gritty feature to build, and we kind of got it wrong the first 2 or 3 times, right? So it's like any iterative approach. But fundamentally, names of cities, names of like place names, human names, these are all can be quite esoteric, right? So a lot of like classical text-to-speech models by themselves will often get these things wrong. And that can be very, upsetting, because, a human doesn't want to feel that they're talking to a robot or whatever, or they don't even recognize it because there's something slightly wrong. So we use a bunch of like techniques. We use a bunch of dictionaries. We use a lot of like phoneme analysis. We use a lot of natural language processing. We do also like a certain amount of like human curation, because one thing we have discovered is it's not a purely automated, from quality control is quite important. But it can pronounce my name quite well, and and we've implemented these things in many, and it often comes up in kind of like when you're dealing with things like brands. A good example is Renault, which most system, Renault. So you might want to make sure that can be very confusing. So that's kind of use cases we see with that. And we're constantly looking to make that easier, right? We're constantly on a mission to like, in the future, we'll probably have something like automatic tagging of documents that you upload, so people like like at least process things well. And the other things that we encountered was the pronunciation of centimeters was quite difficult for some of these models. So that was quite, for if you had got like a kind of news case and we got a bunch of publishers as customers, pronouncing like important stuff like that is quite confusing because it can be quite and of course it just hurts the user experience, and of course keeping a good user experience is central to what we do.
Yeah. I like the idea of like the developer experience, the user experience, like making sure that pathway to being productive is quicker. Because like as you approach new products or new ideas or new tools, there's always that on ramp, and it's something that I pride myself in. Those stuff that I touch and the products that I work on. Like I always think about onboarding. Like if someone found this podcast or found something else that pointed them to this product. How quickly can they get started? And I'm curious, like the developer angle, in this use case too as well. So I imagine there's you coming from the Python world. Like, are there a lot of open source and stuff like that that's sort of building this?
In terms of our SDKs, we currently only support JavaScript and Python. We have plans to do more. If you want to send suggestions, I'd be open to that. But we also have developers using other libraries because it's just an API underneath it. You can just use like curl requests and PHP and stuff like this. We have a few developers using that and some Java developers. I think Java will be one of our next SDKs actually to work on. I just haven't got around to hiring a Java developer yet. It's on my to-do list. But we think a lot about documentation and like how to make those things well and how we. I'm doing a lot of thinking at the moment about like minimizing that on ramp. Like what code sandboxes do people use? Because like a lot of the friction of learning a new tool is just installation. Even like a lot of Python installation is quite difficult. Because people like have a lot of issues like, oh, I forgot to initialize my virtual environment, or I didn't run my Docker container correctly, and all that is just unnecessary friction. So I'm very excited about like tools like Replit, for example, and Gitpod, which I think solve some of these problems. And it's about figuring out which of those. And we use README.io a lot on the documentation side, and it solves a lot of these problems. It's getting better and better, but it's still not quite the level that as a developer purist I would love for the adoption of tools out there to be.
Excellent. So curious, we mentioned a couple times, but and even brought it towards it. Like, how do folks get started in leveraging the tool?
So if you just go to www.api.audio, there'll be a thing in the top right to sign up. There's a free trial, and you get a 1 month free trial, which generally is enough to do about 1 hour worth of audio. And then there's like a pay monthly subscription. I think our first subscription is like $39 per month, and that's generally how people get started and have a look at the tutorials, have a play around with some pronunciation, or build something yourself. And also, I'm very interested in things people build. Right, so for example, we have one customer who's building like a system for building the sounds of pedestrian crossings, right? Now you might think, wow, there's a niche use case, but they have lots of different sounds, and they have lots of different like volumes, and they have all these kind of idiosyncrasies, and he just wanted to build his own tool because that was easier to do his job. And I just find this like staggeringly fascinating that that someone would have that as a problem. So I'd be very interested in just what people do and how easy it is, and of course and also like as any developer, I'm very interested in like how do you like make that simpler. So at the moment, like it's coming up very soon on our roadmap, we're working on a new design of our API, and a lot of that's based on developer feedback, small problems with getting started, small problems with error messages. And I'm a big believer that the error message should try to put you onto the happy path. I think we have that down in parts of it, but there's like anything. There's so much, such a big space to explore that it can be difficult to get all those things. So I'm very open to feedback and curiosity. I think my email should be in the show notes as well. So or my Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely your Twitter. I don't know if we put emails out publicly on the on the website.
Okay. Well, Twitter's fine.
That'd be perfect for scraping now if we did that.
Yeah, true. Sorry, I didn't mean to open up myself to a security issue.
Yes, no worries. We're here to ensure your security is intact, at least for this podcast.
Yeah.
So I want to transition us to picks. These are jam picks, things that we're jamming on.
Yeah.
It could be anything: books, music, food, technology picks. And since you've come prepared with quite a few of them, did you want to go ahead and get us started?
Yeah. So. Actually, one I didn't put in the show notes, but README I quite like as a documentation platform, README.io. I find that quite useful.
Yeah, we actually had them on the podcast, the founder. So
yeah, I think I did listen to that one actually. I am a fan, but the other one is Warp. We chatted about this before. Warp's is www.warp.dev. It's this fantastic terminal. One of my developers was like, "This is amazing! Look at this! It's so fast!" And I was like, "It can't be that cool." And I was like, "Okay." And then now I've been hooked since. I just find it so much easier to use. Podcast wise, I've really been into Matt Clifford's Thoughts in Between. Matt Clifford's one of the co-founders of Entrepreneurs First. And he talks about all sorts of topics. It's quite general, but a lot of it's about kind of technology. And a book recommendation, I've been thinking a lot as I like build teams. I mean, I have like 8 or 9 developers working in my team at the moment. Like, how do you build good engineering management systems, right? And a lot of this is a systems issue. There's a great book by Will Larson. It's called An Elegant Puzzle. And it's like full of lots of discussions of like restructuring or like reorgs, what happens whenever your team gets too big, how do you interact with product, how do you do some product management, which of course a lot of like engineering managers end up doing. Sometimes you have to wear the product management hat, which I wear badly, but sometimes I have to wear it. And he has like good frameworks for that, and like doing good one-to-ones, and also like just thinking about like things like, how do you run a migration? How do you ensure that you have a good on-call rota, et cetera, et cetera? And it's just full of lots of stuff. I also like the book is beautiful. It's published by Stripe Press. It's just a beautifully well-bound book. I don't know if it's been mentioned before on the podcast.
Oh, no, it hasn't actually. And so I'm actually looking at the Amazon link right now. I've read a couple of Stripe Press books, and they do a really good job. Always walk away with some like knowledge base. The Nadia Iqbal book, which is Working in Public.
Oh, I haven't read that. It's on my list. Yeah.
Definitely worth the read if you're interested in sort of approaching open source or even like this improving the open source ecosystem that you might touch and maintain.
No, I'm a big believer in that. It's why giving back to the communities as well and keeping those things open. We contribute quite a lot to open source, so it's something we take seriously as a team.
Excellent. Yeah, so I've got 2 picks. First pick is This Week in Startups. I just recently started listening to this. I think it's for folks who are founders and or aspiring founders. I think there's a lot of good nuggets and wisdom, and I think that what I've got a lot of value from is like their Sunday sessions, which they usually teach something new for founders to teach them about venture capital or things they didn't think about. So recently I learned about the 83B election. So as a founder in a Delaware C Corp, very useful to know that knowledge. And it literally never came up prior to listening to this podcast. So yeah, worth a listen if you're a founder or aspiring founder.
Awesome.
And then my other pick is the camera I'm using. It's the Lumina webcam. It's got basically, I don't know if it's going to activate, but anyway, trying to give a demo and it's not working.
So it's always the curse of a live demo, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah. What I was trying to demo is the cameraman feature, which is like if you move back or if you come closer, it keeps you in frame the entire time.
Okay.
Which is pretty nice. And then it's got this auto blur bokeh sort of situation going. And yeah, it's just like, I've got like a DSLR that's actually mounted over here to the left of my screen. And I love it for doing content and videos, but it's like I have to be sitting down and I have to be looking this way. What I love about the Illumina Cam is that I could be using the standing desk, I could be sitting down here, I could be sitting, just zoomed out a little bit. But it's pretty useful. It's a nice sort of go-to webcam if I don't want to use the heavy rig that I use for content creation. So definitely worth a try.
Awesome. I'll give it a look as well. Thank you for those picks.
Yeah, appreciate it. And then thank you for the conversation. Folks, check out Peadar's work, and listeners, keep spreading the jam. That's all we have time for today. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, or if you'd like to suggest a topic, find us on Twitter @JAMstack Radio. This show is brought to you by Heavybit, the leading investor in developer-first startups. To learn more about Heavybit, visit heavybit.com.